I'd spent 12 years building the system that kept our company alive. Late nights, missed birthdays, every ounce of myself poured into it. So when the VP's cousin strolled in, wearing my promotion like a cheap suit, I just smiled. Nobody knew I held the encryption keys, the heartbeat of every server, every transaction, every secret they'd buried. I didn't shout. I didn't quit. I waited. And when the audit team started sniffing around, they didn't realize they were walking straight into a maze I'd built. A maze with only one exit, and I was the only one holding the door open. I was the last one in the office again. The city outside had gone quiet hours ago, the kind of silence that presses against the windows. My screen glowed with the final lines of code for the infrastructure overhaul. 2 months of 14-hour days, skipped dinners, and whispered promises to my daughter that I'd be home soon. When the deployment script finished running without a single error, I leaned back, letting the hum of the servers be my applause. This was it. The project that would finally push me into the role I'd earned. I shut down my workstation, slid the USB from my pocket, and copied a complete encrypted backup. It was habit by now. Years of knowing that what you build can be stolen if you don't protect it. As I zipped my jacket, I caught my reflection in the dark window, eyes ringed with exhaustion, but sharper than ever. Home was dim, the only light coming from the kitchen. My wife sat at the table, still in her work clothes, a cup of cold tea in front of her. Her eyes flicked to the USB in my hand as I set my bag down. "Another late night?" she asked softly. I nodded. "The last one," I said, and I believed it. She gave me a half smile, but there was worry in her eyes, the kind that lingers even after you've said the right words. After she went to bed, I heated leftovers and sat alone at the table. The microwave clock ticked toward midnight. My phone buzzed. A new email from the VP. "Big news tomorrow. Be there early." I stared at it for a long moment, a slow smile forming. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I imagined walking into that meeting, shaking hands, hearing the congratulations. For the first time in months, I felt light. The next morning, the conference room was already crowded. Colleagues lined the walls, coffee cups in hand, buzzing with anticipation. I took a seat near the front, laptop open, ready to present the final results. The VP stood by the head of the table, grinning like a man who had orchestrated something grand. "Everyone," he began, "we have an exciting announcement. We're bringing in fresh leadership to guide our infrastructure into the future." He turned toward the door, and in walked a man I'd never seen before. Mid-30s, tailored suit, the kind of confidence you can't earn, only inherit. "This," the VP said, "is my cousin Ryan. He's your new director of infrastructure." The room erupted in polite applause. I sat frozen. My name wasn't mentioned. Not my work. Not the 2 months of my life I'd poured into the system. Just Ryan, smiling, shaking hands, thanking people for the warm welcome. He glanced at me as he took his place at the head of the table. "We'll be modernizing everything," he said, voice smooth. "Some of the old frameworks will be replaced. Efficiency is key." His eyes flicked to my laptop as if daring me to object. I closed the lid slowly, forcing a calm expression. My chest felt tight, but my mind was already calculating. I let my gaze drift, not at the VP, not at Ryan, but straight into the invisible lens of a camera that didn't exist. In my head, I asked the question I knew anyone watching my life right now would understand. Have you ever had your work stolen? The meeting droned on, Ryan outlining his vision, the VP nodding along. My colleagues avoided my eyes, their smiles brittle. When it ended, I packed my things with deliberate slowness. That was when I noticed my laptop screen flicker. A notification bloomed in the corner, one I'd never seen before. A single line of text in plain white on a black background. They don't know what you hold. My hand hovered over the trackpad, but the message vanished before I could click. I looked around the room. Empty now, except for the faint echo of voices down the hall. The USB in my pocket felt heavier than it should. I walked out into the cold morning air, my breath forming small clouds. I had no idea who had sent that message, or how they knew what I kept locked away. But in that moment, the sting of humiliation began to fade, replaced by something else entirely. Not rage, not despair, patience. Because if they wanted to play games, they'd just invited the wrong man to the table. 2 days after Ryan's grand entrance, I logged into the intranet to prepare some final reports for archiving. My profile page, a decade's worth of projects, awards, and technical papers, was gone. The screen simply read, "No record found." At first, I thought it was a glitch. But the search bar returned nothing for my name. The infrastructure milestones section now showed a smiling photo of Ryan shaking hands with the VP, the caption praising his swift modernization plan. And there, right under the title, was a high-resolution image of the system I'd spent months building. My code, my architecture, my fingerprints all over it, now credited to him. The taste in my mouth turned metallic. I clicked through the rest of the article and saw words I recognized, phrases I'd written in my original proposal. They hadn't even bothered to change the formatting. I closed the browser before I threw the laptop. My phone sat on the desk, screen lit with my mother's name. I answered, forcing warmth into my voice. "Hey, Ma. How's work, Alex? You sounded so excited last week," she said. I looked around the empty office, at the glass walls and the faint hum of the servers. "It's fine," I lied. "Just busy." I almost told her everything. How they'd erased me, how they'd handed my career to a stranger because of his bloodline, but I couldn't. She didn't need that weight. "I'll visit soon, okay?" We talked about her garden and the neighbor's new dog. She hung up sounding happy. I sat there for a long time, staring at my hands, wondering how people like Ryan could walk into a place and rewrite history in a week. That was when my laptop pinged. A small gray notification slid into the corner of the screen. "Meet me in server room 3 at midnight." No signature, no context. By 11:58 p.m., the building was dark except for the emergency exit lights. Server room 3 was at the far end of the basement corridor, a place I'd been dozens of times, but never after hours. The cold air hit me first, then the hum of racks stacked floor to ceiling. In the glow of the server, LEDs, stood a young man, early 20s, wearing a hoodie and badge clipped to his belt. "You're Alex," he said. Not a question. "You sent the messages?" I asked. He nodded. "Name's Ethan. I was on the infrastructure team until Ryan decided he didn't like my attitude. Fired me last month. But I still have friends in the right places." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. A printed diagram of the company's internal network, annotated with circles, arrows, and notes. "This," he said, "is the power map. Who controls what, where the data flows, and who benefits from it. And it's not just about servers. There are contracts, off-book agreements with vendors tied to the VP's family. I scanned the map, recognizing nodes I'd personally built. And you're telling me this? Why? Ethan's eyes narrowed. Because you have the keys. My chest tightened. You don't know what you're talking about. I do, he said quietly. The encryption keys you carry can open the archive vault. Not just code backups, financial records. The kind of files that can take down half the board if they ever see daylight. I studied him. If he was lying, he was playing a dangerous game. If he wasn't, the stakes had just tripled. There's more, he said, glancing toward the door. You're not alone. Someone on the board wants Ryan and the VP gone. They've been feeding me intel. I can connect you two. A second traitor inside the castle. I didn't know whether to feel relief or suspicion. Why me? I asked. Because you're the only one who can do it without burning the whole place down. The words echoed in my head long after he left. I stood there in the cold hum of the server room, the diagram in my hand, the USB in my pocket suddenly feeling like a live grenade. The next morning, I walked into the office to find an all-staff email from the VP. Effective immediately, an urgent security audit will be conducted on all legacy systems. My phone buzzed with a follow-up from my department head. They're starting with your servers. The game had officially begun. The audit team arrived at my desk before noon. 3 people in company polos, carrying clipboards and USB drives like badges of authority. We'll need full access to your servers, the lead auditor said, not bothering with small talk. Of course, I replied, logging into the admin console. What they didn't see was the custom script I triggered in the background, a phantom log generator I'd written years ago for stress testing. It would feed them clean, harmless data while hiding the real system logs in a secure partition only I could reach. As they pored over the fake entries, I leaned back, arms crossed, wearing the mask of cooperation. The lead auditor eventually nodded, clearly frustrated by the lack of findings. We'll move on to the next batch, she said. That night, at home, the tension I'd been holding onto began to unravel. I stepped into my daughter's room. She was already asleep, her small hand clutching a crayon drawing. I eased it free. Stick figures of our family, me in the middle with a cape, and the words, "My dad is a hero," scrawled underneath. My throat tightened. I set it gently on her nightstand. I couldn't take it. Not yet. Not while I was lying to her about what I'd become. Ethan called me an hour later. Check your email, he said. The file was a video, grainy, clearly from a hidden camera. The VP sat in his corner office, Ryan across from him. We need him gone, the VP was saying. Not just out of here, out of the industry. Ryan smirked. Leave that to me. They talked about leveraging personal contacts at competing firms, painting me as a security risk to make me unemployable. My hands clenched so hard my knuckles popped. This wasn't just about a stolen promotion anymore. They wanted to erase me completely. Before I could process it, Ethan's voice came back on the line. Now you understand why I'm helping you. The next morning, a system alert flashed across my screen. Critical error on a server I hadn't touched in months. I checked the logs. They were chaotic, messy, nothing like my work. Someone else was tampering with the infrastructure. Whether they were trying to sabotage the audit or frame me, I couldn't tell. But I knew one thing. I wasn't the only ghost in their machine. That night, I made my move. Using an old alias from my early days in coding forums, I posted a carefully curated leak on a tech site known for deep dives into corporate misconduct. The files were just damning enough to spark interest. Emails about overbilling clients, proposals for cost-cutting measures that violated safety protocols, but not enough to point directly to me. Within hours, the post had been cross-shared to Reddit threads and Twitter accounts with thousands of followers. A tech influencer dissected my leak in a 20-minute video, pausing on certain lines and hinting at systemic corruption at a major player in the industry. By the next day, Shakuri VP scandal was climbing. Then something I didn't expect happened. A second account, newly created, started dropping even more explosive details. Internal memos, private financial ledgers, even surveillance stills from inside the building. One post stopped me cold. A photo of me and my daughter at a park, her face pixelated, but her hand in mine unmistakable. The caption read, "Even the good ones have something to hide." I didn't know if it was a warning or an attempt to smear me, but the implication was clear. They knew how to get to me. Then came the video. A shaky phone recording of me walking out of the building. Laptop bag slung over my shoulder. Expression unreadable. The caption simply read, "The man who built the walls is now outside them." It hit 2 million views on TikTok in less than a day. I stared at the screen, the glow lighting up my empty apartment. Somewhere out there, my enemies were losing control of their own story. But so was I. The first tremor hit on a Thursday morning. A well-known tech blogger with a reputation for destroying careers published a 5,000-word exposé, complete with screenshots, leaked memos, and detailed timelines, tying the VP's department to a string of fraudulent vendor contracts. The opening paragraph alone named both the VP and Ryan, painting them as the architects of a system built to siphon money while burying dissent. I didn't have to wonder where the data came from. The writing style matched the materials I'd seeded. But halfway through the article, I saw something that stopped me. Entire sections, pages of incriminating material, were things I had never leaked. Internal audit reports, offshore account ledgers, even private Slack messages mocking employees who had been laid off. Someone had handed the blogger far more than I ever could have. I minimized the browser just as my wife walked into the room, still in her robe, coffee in hand. "You've been glued to that screen all week," she said. "What's going on, Alex?" I tried to brush it off, but the exhaustion in her eyes broke something in me. I gestured for her to sit. "I'm in the middle of something. Dangerous," I admitted, "and I'm scared. Scared I'll lose everything. Scared you and our daughter will get dragged into it." Her face softened, but she didn't speak right away. Finally, she reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. "Whatever it is, don't lose yourself in it," she said. "Come back to us when it's over." For the first time since this began, I felt the full weight of what I was risking. That night, my phone buzzed with a news alert. The VPS scandal had hit #1 trending nationwide. Every major outlet was picking it up, and the board of directors had called an emergency meeting for the following morning. The micro cliffhanger was no longer just mine. The entire country was watching to see what happened next. By noon the next day, the VP had been temporarily relieved of duties pending investigation, and Ryan's administrative privileges were revoked to ensure the integrity of the audit. The internal memo was clinical, but the panic behind it was obvious. That afternoon, my department head called me into his office. The CEO was on speakerphone. "Alex," he began, voice heavy with the calm tone of a practiced negotiator. "You've been here a long time. We believe you can help steady the ship while we sort through this turbulence." I didn't answer immediately. I was too busy reading between the lines. They wanted me to be the public face of stability, the loyal employee who stood by the company in its darkest hour. A shield, a pawn dressed as a knight. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you still have the respect of the staff," the CEO said. "And because I think you want to see this place survive." I gave a noncommittal nod, but inside, alarms were going off. This wasn't about survival. It was about control. And if the CEO was reaching out to me directly, it meant they didn't know who else to trust. That evening, Ethan called from an unlisted number. "The board contact wants to meet," he said. We met in the corner booth of a near-empty diner. The man slid into the seat opposite me, late 50s, silver hair, tailored suit. He introduced himself only as Mr. Gray. "You've been effective," he said without preamble, "but you're not the only player in this game." I frowned. "Meaning?" "You and your friend think you're running the leaks. You're not. I've been directing both of you from the start." The air between us seemed to thin. He leaned forward. "Ethan got the map because I wanted him to. You got the bloggers' attention because I fed them your breadcrumbs. You've been following my trail without even realizing it." It was a twist I didn't see coming, not because I hadn't considered the possibility of manipulation, but because the pieces fit too neatly. Every advantage I thought I'd created had been engineered by someone else. "What's your angle?" I asked. "To remove the VP and his cousin, of course. But I don't do it for revenge. I do it because the next in line for control will be agreeable to my interests." "And if I say no?" He smiled faintly. "If you move tonight, you win. If you wait, you're next." The words echoed in my head long after he left. In the reflection of the diner window, my own face looked back at me, not triumphant, not defeated, but caught between two forces pulling in opposite directions. I'd wanted control over this game. Now I wasn't sure I'd ever had it. When I stepped outside, the air was heavy with rain, and for the first time since this started, I realized the real danger wasn't just losing my job. It was losing the last shred of choice I had left. By the time I got back to my apartment that night, the rain had turned into a steady downpour. I sat at my desk, staring at the terminal window for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. If I moved now, everything would change. I typed the first command. The sleeping code I'd embedded months earlier began to stir, lines of dormant functions waking up, spreading across the network like invisible ink under heat. Within minutes, every administrative account in the company's system was locked out. Every one except mine. The next phase was automatic. As the system sealed itself, it quietly bundled a copy of the encrypted financial archives, cross-checked with metadata from Ryan's projects and the VP's contracts. Then, like a ghost slipping through 3 different walls at once, it transmitted those bundles to separate government agencies, financial crimes, corporate oversight, and the tax authority. No single recipient had the full picture, but together, they could dismantle the empire brick by brick. When the last packet confirmed delivery, I leaned back, exhaling for what felt like the first time in days. My phone was already buzzing. Alerts from system monitors, frantic messages from colleagues. I ignored them all and dialed Ethan. He picked up on the second ring. "It's done," I said. There was a pause. Then his voice softened. I knew you'd pull it off. Ethan? I hesitated, the weight of the last few weeks pressing against my chest. Thank you for trusting me. For a moment, there was silence on the line. Then he said, "Don't thank me yet." And the call ended. The next morning, I turned on the TV to see Ethan's face on the news. He was seated across from a network anchor, speaking earnestly about standing up for what's right and protecting the integrity of the industry. The chyron at the bottom read, "Whistleblower reveals corruption at major tech firm." Every clip they played, every piece of evidence was mine. But Ethan didn't say my name once. In the public eye, the hero's role was his. By mid-afternoon, the CEO's assistant called, requesting an urgent meeting. The boardroom was half empty when I arrived, but the CEO was there, leaning forward like a man with an offer he thought couldn't be refused. "Alex," he began, "you've proven your worth. The company needs a steady hand now more than ever. I'm prepared to offer you the CTO position, significant salary increase, stock options, full autonomy over infrastructure. You'll be untouchable here." It was tempting, dangerously tempting. The idea of wielding that kind of power after what they'd done to me. But I saw the subtext in his eyes. This wasn't a reward. It was containment. They wanted me where they could see me, where they could make sure I didn't decide to burn the rest of the house down. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I think we both know it's not what I'm looking for." The CEO's smile didn't falter, but the disappointment was in his voice. "Think carefully, Alex. Opportunities like this don't come twice." "Neither do warnings," I replied, standing to leave. That night, combing through the online chatter about Ethan's TV appearance, I found a thread buried deep in a tech forum. Someone had posted a leaked contract negotiation between an unnamed consultant and a rival firm. The consultant's demands matched Ethan's style too perfectly to be coincidence. Salary, bonus, relocation package. He'd been talking to the competition the whole time. So much for trust. I closed the tab and opened my desk drawer. Inside was the last USB drive I'd prepared, the one I'd never told Ethan about, never even hinted at. It contained a separate archive, one I'd built quietly while everyone was distracted by the public leaks. Its contents were worse than anything I'd already released. Emails implicating the CEO directly in backroom deals. Private communications showing he'd known about the VP's schemes for years. If this ever saw daylight, it wouldn't just take down the remaining leadership. It would erase the company's name from the industry entirely. I turned it over in my hand, the metal catching the low light of the room. The temptation was there, but so was the fatigue. I walked to the small safe in the corner, placed the USB inside, and shut the door without spinning the lock. If someone wanted to open it, they could. If I wanted to, I could. For now, it would stay where it was. A loaded chamber I wasn't ready to fire. 2 months after I walked away from the CEO's offer, I was standing in a glass-walled office that smelled faintly of fresh paint and ambition. The company was small, barely 20 people, but every single one of them had once worked under the VP Orion. They'd left in waves over the years, taking their skills and their integrity with them. Now, they were building something new. The founder, a former project manager from my old team, clapped me on the shoulder. "We don't want to be the biggest," he said. "We just want to be the cleanest. And with you on board, I think we can be." It wasn't the corner office I'd once imagined for myself, but it felt better, lighter. No hidden knives, no silent politics. Every decision was debated openly, every budget line visible to anyone who cared to look. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't guarding my back every time I walked into a meeting. The next morning, I drove my daughter to school. She sat in the passenger seat, legs swinging, backpack resting on her knees. As we pulled up to the curb, she turned to me with a smile. "My teacher asked what you do, and I told her. My dad helps people and doesn't let bad guys win." The words hit me harder than I expected. I reached over, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "That's a good answer," I said. Watching her walk through the school gates, I realized that, for all the battles I'd fought, this was the victory I cared about most, her seeing me as something worth being proud of. Work at the startup was intense but honest. We weren't chasing headlines, but we were quietly winning over clients who'd grown tired of dealing with bloated, corrupt corporations. 3 weeks in, our sales team closed a deal with a major logistics firm. At the celebration lunch, I noticed the name on the contract and froze. It was a former client of my old company. Apparently, when the scandal hit, they'd cut ties and started shopping for new vendors. Our reputation for transparency had put us at the top of their list. It was a small victory, but it tasted sweet. That evening, after the office emptied, I stayed behind to finish some code reviews. As I shut down my laptop, my phone buzzed with a single email notification. The sender was anonymous, the subject line short. "Ready for round 2?" I didn't open it. Not yet. But I knew it meant the past wasn't done with me. In the months that followed, news of my old company's comprehensive restructuring filled the business pages. The VP resigned quietly. His cousin vanished from the industry entirely. Publicly, it was framed as a new era of accountability. Privately, I knew the rot had simply been cut away to save the rest of the tree. One afternoon, a courier arrived at the startup, carrying a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of heavy paper. The message was typed, no signature. "Let's work together. Same goal, different target." Attached was a dossier on another corporation, bigger than my old employer, with deeper pockets and, if the preliminary documents were to be believed, a rot that made the VP's schemes look amateurish. The final page was a business card, a name I recognized instantly, Mr. Gray. I sat there for a long time, the paper between my fingers, the weight of the decision pressing down. Joining forces with him meant stepping back into the shadows I'd just escaped, but it also meant the chance to dismantle something worse than what I'd already faced. That night, at home, I pulled open the safe in my study. Inside, the last USB drive sat where I'd left it, the metal cool under my fingers. I turned it over slowly, the hum of possibility in my ears. This time, I didn't leave the safe unlatched. I placed the USB back inside, turned the key, and heard the lock click shut. Some battles can wait. Some weapons don't need to be drawn unless the stakes demand it. I closed the safe, sat back in my chair, and let the quiet settle around me. Some keys open doors. Others keep them shut forever.